All right. Hey, welcome back. It's so nice to see you again. So in the previous session, I promised that we'll get to coding, but I kind of did not keep my promise. We set up some things and everything in this confusing plugin boilerplate, and you have no idea what we're doing. I understand, it's okay. And I will try to fix this as much as possible in this session and more in the next one, where I'll explain everything what's going on. Today, what I want to do is I want to start from somewhere else, and I want to, let me just share my screen, in fact. So yeah, here is my CRM instance, and I have one of my accounts. If I go back to the list and if I create a new account and type in a name, I click save. So when I clicked save, that sent a message to the CRM and it got through all these stages. And now what I want to do is I just want this full name to be capitalized, not capitalized, but all in uppercase. And I can do that with plugins. It will be a nice simple example just to show how that works. The last time we ended up somewhere here. So that's Visual Studio. We have our class. The class is named account capitalize. We have this boilerplate and we have this method, and you still don't understand what's context, what's service, what's that. And I'll try to explain some of this right now and some of that in the next session. Now, the first thing that we want to do is we want to get the actual value. We want to get the name that the user has entered into the form. And if you remember from the first session, the name is stored in this little envelope on this piece of paper called target. Target is an entity, and it's actually an account entity. It contains all accounts attributes. It does not contain an ID yet because the record is not created yet. But yeah, let's not get too deep into that. We just need that target. How do we get the target? Now, this context might seem very, very promising, and you are entirely right. It's hidden within this context here. This context is what connects this isolated plugin with the actual context, with the actual message. And inside this context, if I just type context period, you can see there's these input parameters, and one of these input parameters is also called a target. This context.input parameters, it's just a simple dictionary, and you can query a dictionary using strings. The key, the value that we want to get is under a key called target. And this target is of type entity, so let's just kind of assign it as an entity here. And let's just save that in here. So I'll do target equals and this thing. Now, in some very specific scenarios, this target might not be available. It might be null. So what I like to do in the beginning is just do a little check like this. So if context, if this target, if this is null, or if this target is not an entity, then let's just quit everything. This is not a case we're interested in. And it looks like I also forgot one of the cases. So I must also check if the context.input parameters even contains this target. So we'll just do target, and that should be it. So the context must contain this target key. It must not be null, and it must be entity. Now, the entity is a type, it's a class that's available here within this Microsoft.xrm.sdk, and we got that the last time when we downloaded this core assemblies package from Nugget. So this is where this entity is coming from. And great, now we have the target. Now we can do some stuff with it. So if I do target dot and just see what it gives us, you'll see these attributes, and this is exactly what we need. So attributes is just another dictionary as well, and we can query this dictionary also using keys, and we can also do just directly here. So we can also query target directly without doing dot attributes. It's entirely the same thing, but it's just a bit quicker instance. Now, what I want to do next is I want to first, so we can query this target, but what should we put in here? We need the name of the attribute that's available on the account. So I have my account here. This is the account name, but this is not the name that's actually within that's not the name that appears under the hood. As simple as that. So if you, and the name that I want is actually called a logical name. And if you remember from the XRM toolbox tutorial, there was also a tool called Level Up. It's this little rocket here. So if I click this rocket and click on logical names here, I get the name that also appears in our entity. So the name that I'm looking for is actually just called name here. And what I want to do with this name, so if I just enter the name as like this will entirely work. But later on, when you have a lot of these names and everything, and if you want to change this name, or I don't know what happens if you want to change this in bulk, or if you're just refactoring everything, it makes a whole lot of sense to save this name as a separate like constant or variable. So I like to do something like this. So variable name underscore attribute, call it whatever you want, but I just like to store this name in a separate variable. So the next time that I'm refactoring something, and if I comment that out, I'll get an error here, and I will know that this is something I have to fix as well. In the same fashion as we checked everything here, we must also check if the name actually exists. So in this letter, the name might not appear, and that might be the case if the client, if the user did not actually populate this account name. So in this scenario, this field is required. So this is not very usual, but it might happen that some of the other fields, let's say we're also checking the phone or some other non-required fields, and the user might just not fill them out. So we need to also check if the target actually contains this attribute. Now, the next thing that I want to do is I can finally extract the value from here. This value here is a string, so I will also kind of cast it into a string. This is not actually a cast, but you know what's going on. And lastly, I will just store this in another variable so that it's a bit easier to reference later on. Now, I also want to check if this value is null, and in that case, I do not want to uppercase anything, so I'll just do a little check here. Now, the last thing that I want to do is I will just do this target.attributes, and I can also rename that from remove that from here, and I'll just assign an uppercase value of this name value, like this. So name value dot to upper invariant, and this will do the trick. Let's take a break here and we'll see how to actually register the plugin and test it on the Dataverse, on the CRM in the next tutorial. So stay tuned, subscribe, and see you next time. Cheers.